I'm Dr. Fred Johnson. I'm the founder of InitiativeOne, located here in Green Bay, Wisconsin, but we're also in 7 countries and located in 6 different states. We are thrilled that you have chosen to give part of your time to listen, to view this podcast. I am thankful and grateful to introduce to you our newest team member, Lisa Flanary. Lisa lives on the western side of the state of Wisconsin. And in a moment, Lisa's going to share a bit about her journey. But she is a seasoned senior executive with a background in major corporations. In the very short time that she has been with us, she has been helping us. We have outgrown our systems. We outgrew our processes. And those are good problems. But if you don't fix those, they start to fix you. And Lisa's an expert in those areas. Lisa, it is so good to have you, and we welcome you to the InitiativeOne podcast and to the InitiativeOne family.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fred. I am so happy to be here.
So talk to us about your journey that led you here.
So as you mentioned, I am a long-term seasoned insurance and financial services executive and have really spent a lot of time leading teams and reading, exploring what's good leadership, what does it look like? And sometimes what I thought was right and what I felt was right and I knew worked for my teams wasn't always what we practiced. And so we would bring in leadership development coaches, or I would bring them into our teams. And, it didn't always stick. So when I met Dr. Phil Ertl and learned more about his journey and him joining your team, what he talked to me about was very consistent with what I thought and tried to do myself in my gut. But what I loved about InitiativeOne was it's research-based, it's proven, and it's packaged in a way that it can be delivered to teams to be more effective in their leadership journeys.
So along your journey, talk about this, because we run into companies all the time who talk about wanting to be current in their leadership practices in today's world that requires a different approach completely to leadership. And yet we find all the time that they're misaligned in their actual activities and how they do it. What have you found are those key areas of misalignment that many companies and leadership teams struggle with between practice and actually doing it?
There are a couple of things. One is when it's a company that is a shareholder-driven, stock-based company, you don't always have the time to invest, or it doesn't feel like you have the time to invest because the shareholders want the price of the stock to go up now, and they want results now. And leadership development takes some investment, and it takes a change in how it's always been done. And so I think not knowing, is this really going to work, being vulnerable, saying that you don't have all the answers, being wrong, or maybe needing to change is a scary place for leaders to be. So it's more about what can you do to give me results today. And sometimes that comes across to the people that they're leading as direction and not wanting input. And so it's a very traditional leadership approach. I think what also happens is, maybe it's related to that, but I think egos get in the way a lot. If I got moved into this position, so it's back to this leadership as a position-based authority. If I got moved into this position, then I need to already have all the answers. So if I bring you in, then I want you to validate what I think and what I know and change them, right? And so it's, I think that's why it doesn't stick, quite honestly.
You know, we were having a conversation recently with a CEO of a corporation, and this is what his phrase was: "My team really needs leadership enhancement. They really need deep leadership transformation, but I'm all good. I don't need it." What does that communicate to you if you were a team member under that person? What would that say to you, and how would it affect your followership of him?
I think what he doesn't know is that the team already knows that about him, and they've already figured out how to operate around that, right? They probably already have given up because they realize that it's not just about them. So I had an experience where we would frequently hear, "We don't have the talent." And it was a mantra. It was, "We don't have the talent. We don't have the talent. If we only had the talent." And we had the talent. I had a team of people I was so proud of, and they wanted to do good work, and they tried, and they over and over and over again. And even though those things were said in our senior leadership meetings, of course they knew that's what was being said.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was going back out and telling them that was said. If it's said behind closed doors, you know it's felt, and they've heard it in other places.
Well, and even if you think that you're not saying it out loud, they are picking it up through attitude, through body language. When they see a metric not being met and they watch that person's reaction, you can't fool people very long.
No.
And so one of the things that we've seen in working with shareholder-driven companies, as you've alluded to very clearly, is there's not a lot of patience. And those organizations struggle with watching and making long-term commitments because it's one quarter to the next quarter to the next quarter. And so one of the things that we teach is that often collides with that mentality is that you have to make decisions based upon purpose and then your non-negotiable values, plus your key critical goals that over a period of time, no more than 2 or 3, are transformational for that organization. What we have found, ironically, is the best leaders who lead and operate in very strong shareholder, quarter-to-quarter companies is that they often will, number one, they will not make a decision based upon the quarter to quarter. They will work with their board and their shareholders that if you want long-term viability, we are going to make decisions based on our values. Our values and our purpose is our sweet spot. This is where we are the best version of ourselves. This is where, when we focus on this is where our long-term success happens. And to find leaders who have the courage to live in the long play when their shareholders are putting pressure, they really don't care about the long-term vitality. Would you agree with that? And they want as much return as quick as possible. So it takes a very strong leader who has internalized principle-based leadership to lead in a company like that. And yet we have seen again and again and again that provides stability and consistency instead of moving from quarter to quarter to quarter to quarter.
Absolutely. And I think you can operate in both worlds. I think the leaders that do it effectively, first of all, I couldn't agree more. When you start with your purpose and you've really done the exploration work that says this is why we exist, and these are our values, these are the principles by which we're going to live, decision making can be so easy. And then if you take that and you say, here's our vision. So even in a shareholder driven company, you can say, here's our vision. Here's the big goal that we're striving for. And here's how we're going to parse it out quarter to quarter. So we will be able to show you as an analyst of our stock that, remember, this is our vision. This is where we're going. This is the progress we promised you from this quarter to the next. And you can start to show that. So one of the most powerful tools that I've seen is, and you have it in the models, right? The purpose to vision to values and goals. And so when you put that together, then you can create your roadmap, which works for any company, whether you're shareholder driven or not, that says, here's how we're going to line up the activities. And that's when it's really magical for people, because they can say, when you start to introduce things that aren't on the roadmap, they can say, wait a minute, I don't think that lines up with our goals, our vision, our purpose, where we're going. And you get an engaged employee group that reminds you because sometimes as leaders we get a little scattered and we want to grab something that we think looks cool. Or
yeah, my team accuses me of watching the latest bling, and I'm shocked that they would even notice that. You know, Lisa, let me give you an illustration. Many years ago, when I had first started this company and we were in Scottsdale, there were two major health systems. And if I mentioned the name, everyone would know who they were. But one national firm wanted to merge with the local firm that was dominant in Arizona. And the national firm had a vision that a purpose that included global language, and the Arizona-based system had language that was based on focusing on the community. One is not worse or better, but they are radically different. That requires completely different focuses, strategies, and business models. And so I was with the executive team of this Arizona team, and the CEO, he was brilliant. And he had worked as a CEO with some of the most well-known hospital systems in the country. So he knew what he was doing. And I started introducing what we call our decision frame, that when you make decisions, you've got to make them on a consistent objective according to purpose, values, and critical goals. And I'll never forget, he opened the conversation with, is this another set of nice platitudes that we're going to put on the wall, and it's going to sound nice, and we're going to be all fired up for 3 days, and we will never use them? And I assured him, first of all, I said, that's up to you. And if you choose not to, you are missing a major opportunity to take a leap in the quality and the speed of your organizational decision-making. And the organization who can make decisions faster and better in the marketplace will rule that facet of the marketplace if their competitors are not able to do the same thing. And so they had been working for 3 years to decide whether they should do this or not. And what got in the way is it was a community that had a lot of pride around how elite the community was. And they had, and so it was a community that was really strong on appearances. And so it was, what was really hurting them was the ego trip of, if we combine, everyone will know how fantastic we were. And so it took them for 3 years, they were trying to make this decision. Well, imagine your senior leadership team locking in for 3 years on trying to do a merger. And you can imagine what happened. They began to lose quality. Their nursing quality began to deteriorate because what you focus on is what you get. And if you have 3 years of uncertainty, you're going to get an organization that's uncertain. And so when I laid this out, I'll never forget that CEO saying to me, "Oh my gosh, if we had used this methodology of how to make a decision, we would have made this decision in 3 weeks." And the only reason it would have taken us 3 weeks is the time that was involved in going through the various layers, from the board to the senior team to all of the stakeholders to the physician organizations. And he said, this cost us a lot of money because we were making decisions based on ego and personality, not on purpose and principle. And he laid out that they had lost well over $100 million in lost productivity. And so when we talk about making decisions based on purpose and principle, which are your 3 to 6 non-negotiable values, and then creating a very clear, powerful plan to get there, we're not messing around. And time is money. And so when you talk about, I'm so validated by the fact that you have experienced the same thing too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we went through this in one of my last companies, and I think people go into it and they think, oh, it's going to take time. Oh, it's the soft stuff. It's not. It's probably the hardest work that they'll do. And part of what takes time is taking people through it so they're part of the journey, and they need to feel included. They need to feel aligned. And you get there so much faster. I'm sure you've talked about this. Other people have talked to me in the past about slowing down to speed up. It's so true. If you slow down just because you slow down, that's not it. The whole point is, how do you get that alignment and slow down to get that alignment? Take a breath.
We have found that if you slow down and make decisions that are well thought out and involve the input as many people as you can and still be in a timely, deliberate fashion, what happens is it eliminates the passive-aggressive resistance in the middle of the organization in implementing that strategic plan. And because often what happens, we think speed is so important. We misread what speed is. So we're going to get in a room and we're going to have a weekend retreat and we're going to bring in someone. And in two afternoons, after you come back and playing from tennis and the pool, we're going to, in a matter of about 6 hours, we're going to define the next 2 years of activity for this multi-billion-dollar operation with thousands of employees. And then they can't figure out why they're part of the 87% of strategic plans that fail, because they didn't take the time to ask the people who would actually execute the plan, what do you think? What are we missing? And you talked about at the beginning about vulnerability. Well, we think, again, this soft woo-woo thing of vulnerability. Vulnerability will stop in the middle of that process and say, what do you think? And the reason why it's vulnerable, because you may get an answer that you didn't think about or is a complete different direction. And you have to be able to have the emotional security to say, that is a fantastic idea, instead of being threatened that that idea came from someone else and you have to take the credit. And so this whole thing about vulnerability, it is a big deal in leadership.
It's a really big deal. And you have to be willing to say, oh, I didn't think of that. That's really interesting, and mean it.
Yes.
And it's okay. I don't think that was, back to we don't have the talent conversation. My whole thing with that leadership team was we don't have to have all the answers. I had such a diverse team. They were working on data analytics. They were working on marketing. They were working on innovation. There was no way I could possibly know everything that they knew. And I was okay with that.
And when you can say that to the team, look, I don't have all the answers, which goes against the mantra of the last 100 years of leadership that you have to know it all, or at least pretend that you know it all. When you say that to your team, what you're actually saying is, oh, I need you. I can't do this by myself. And people want to win. They want to be needed. And what we've learned is if you're not a part of that input process, you don't own it. People do not own what they are not a part of. And what has your experience been when you are leading a team that feels respected, that you've created that psychological safety by your modeling, by saying, guys, I blew that. And I don't want to do that again. I need your help. And you create that environment where people are not afraid to challenge each other because not out of a gotcha moment, but they really care about the team succeeding. What have you found? In your experience, how do those kinds of teams operate as opposed from a team where you've got one super ego leader and everybody else is the gopher who is trying to help this person put a notch in his or her belt?
Well, first of all, they have fun. They solve big problems and they get a lot done because it's back to the under the table, over the table drama. The drama is gone because they're actually listening to each other. They're talking to each other. They're willing, just like the leader needs to be willing to say, I don't have all the answers. That's why you're here. They do that for each other as well. So I view my job as the leader to set the vision and to assemble the right people on the team, to create the environment that allows them to be successful and to guide. And it's not to do, and it's not to think for them, but it's to recognize when we'll be off track and when the rest of the organization may not be where we are. Now, how do we need to go out and help bring them along? Or where do we need to adjust? Because maybe they're not ready for what we're doing. You said something earlier. I was thinking about this morning. The old style of leadership is, do this because I said so, because I have the position power, because I have the knowledge, the expertise. And people may say they'll do that, but the people actually control what gets done.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how big or small the organization. If you don't have that alignment, they can slow things down to a stop.
Yes.
And they can take advantage of the bureaucracy of a large organization.
And hide behind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if you think you have the power as a leader, you're mistaken.
We tell people if you have to declare that you're the boss, you're not the boss. And if it's important for you to be a boss, you'll never be a leader. Let me ask you one other question in closing. This has been so fascinating, and you can see why we're thrilled that Lisa has joined our team. As a leader who is a woman, and notice I used that, many times we talk about women leaders. No, you're a leader who is a woman. We have found in today's world that because women in general and broadly speaking are more naturally gifted and part of their DNA lends much more easily to emotional intelligence, which is a key in leading today. And yet as we're moving away from, I mean, I can't tell you how many teams that I work with that may have 14 males and one female. I can't remember one team that had 14 women and one male. And so we're still in that transition in society where you've got entire industries that are now beginning to take the glass ceiling off that's been there for years for women. What would you say to a leader who is a female, who is already being told certain narratives of how you have to behave as a woman who is a leader? What would you say to them that has been critical for you in your journey that could help them accelerate their success by taking the shortcut of wisdom that you would convey?
There are probably a couple of things. One that I think about right away is that some women, and it's probably more traditionally, have believed that to be successful in a man's world, you had to act like a man. So you had to have a different self in the office than maybe you had at home. I just don't buy it. And I've seen it, and I've seen women gain positional power because of it. But those have not been the women who have made the space for other women to grow and develop in the workplace. So I think what we need to do for each other is to make that space, to not believe that, oh, if there's the one or two token women on the leadership team, that's enough and there's no room for you, because there's room for everyone. And so I think part of it is, I listened in on a seminar for women in insurance a couple of years ago, not that long ago. And one of the things that really struck me was a woman who said, what I try to do if a man is in a meeting and takes credit for something a woman just said, because that happens, I go back and say, well, as Susan just said, and make sure that credit is given, because some of it gets back to what we teach, right? That we are enough. So it's that whole, you're not a less than.
Yes.
And so how do you create the environment that has women feeling like they are enough and that they can do it? And it's not just women. So I struggle a little bit with it, and I'm so glad that you use person first language.
Yes.
Because it's a leader who is anything, right? A leader who is in a diverse, whether it's racial or male, female, or whatever it might be, we're not less than. And so I've done a lot of mentoring. So as a woman, I've been part of formal mentoring programs because that was done for me. And I've had really great men, bosses, leaders who have valued what I had to say and have given me chances. And so what I try to do is not even see it, but I know it's there. But the person first approach is where it has to start.
Yeah. My wife and partner, Tracy, went through healthcare and was a senior executive and had to go up through the ranks and deal with the misogyny and deal with the male bias and deal with things that as a female approaches to her that a male would not have to put up with. And that grind can begin to tick at your soul an inch at a time. And so I'm so thankful that we have such a strong role model, not only for women leaders, but for male leaders, because it applies to both genders, to all races. And so it is such an honor to have you. I'm just sitting here going, wow, how do we get her? She is so daggone smart. I thank you that you have attached your wagon to us because we are privileged. You can see this is a woman who has been through it. She's been around the block and she's gained a lot of knowledge over the years. And thank you for sharing some of that with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You all, thank you for joining us today as you are listening or viewing this podcast. We appreciate you. We appreciate your effort to be a part of the InitiativeOne family. We hope that you have a terrific week. Let me share a couple things that are upcoming. In June, we have our first National Leadership Conference here in Green Bay. People are coming from all over the country to be a part of the InitiativeOne Leadership Conference. Check that out on our website. Also, we have a new book out called A to Z Leadership, written by myself and our colleague, Dr. Stephen Peters. We are so, Stephen's not, but I'm surprised, given my 2.7 self sometimes, that so many people are purchasing that book. Check that out. And then join us at our think tank that we have every month. That's how you get a flavor of who we are and some of the cutting edge work that we are so privileged to be able to do. Again, thank you for joining us. We hope you have a terrific week ahead. And Lisa, again, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.